Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Impossible World Podcast. I am your host, Grin, and today we are going to be continuing where we left off. Boy howdy, was the last part very, very long, and considering I edit both of these, or all of these, it is a lot. I would like to keep these in the hour 20 mark, especially considering, like most podcasts, they're just chill, hanging out, throwing things at you every now and again. Whereas we've been trying to make hella ground, so I've been just like, bang, 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 bang. Here's this idea, here's that idea. This is what happens in this instance, and blah, blah, blah. Also, I did not mean to put the Red Bull up there. I just had to set it somewhere because it is morning. But also, it is the one day of the week that I try to do nothing, Sunday, which I do believe these come out Saturday. But yes, it's a Sunday. I'm trying to do nothing. I get one day a week to where I just try to shut off my brain and just do something that I want to do. But then again, those days always feel a little bit empty because nothing is accomplished, and achieving things helps with that feeling. Anyways, regardless, it goes to show you how much I do enjoy this. Because on my day off, I'm like, you know what? Just so that we have achieved something, let's film one more part of the podcast, despite we have like 6 in post ready to go out to you guys. So yes, I'm so sorry. Also, we should go get our water. But yes, I also felt like, you know what, it's my day off kind of thing. I'm gonna soak this in. As much as I love coffee, also mug of the sitting. This is my favorite mug. You cannot see it, but it does say coffee there, and it is just the cutest thing. It's also like a honeycomb. Awesome. It's weighted, it's also giant, so it's like a single cup, which really holds 2 cups of coffee, and I feel less bad about it. Anyways, let's do this. Boy, am I, it's like the ass break of dawn, guys. I'm like, ooh, borrow you, because my goddamn fingers can't weasel under there. There you are. Oh great, the dust has already come back with vengeance. Perfect. Also, you can't even see back there because of darkness. Man, I used to drink Red Bulls when I was, going through puberty, and I think it fucked up my shit because now whenever I drink it, it's like, even though I've gone like 3 months without having it, whenever I have one, it's like it brings back all the memories. My mouth salivates, and I'm just like, there's a problem here. There's an issue afoot here. Listen, guys, every podcast can't be here's all these ideas, here's all this whirlwind of just things happening. But let's get on track. So first of all, hello. Forgive me for the rambles. I am, of course, your hostess, with not the mostest, but we are going to be continuing with our story. I think I'll keep the pace that we're going. Yeah, just because I don't know. A part of me does want to rush, because in my head, I wanted to play with 2 things. I wanted to play with the idea of one of my favorite things in any show, whether it be Overlord. I just watched the Magi series with the Sinbad character. I don't know what it's called. It's something Sinbad. But basically, it had one of the coolest things that I've seen, or Shield Hero, anything like that, where I love in media and games and in TV shows and whatever, when the main characters basically gear up. But I like it when they gear up in a bigger way. And in Sinbad, that's a good example for kind of the idea that I got of doing this, where literally you are getting not necessarily like these broken, overpowered forms, which is in Sinbad, but instead a leg up from everybody else. And some are just kind of good, others are really like essential to your survival and your victory in the world. Like again, Crowley's cane. By the way, I didn't really mention that. I thought about that when editing, or when I was exercising last night. I didn't really mention what's happening with Crowley. Like, in the cemetery, what's going on? Is he, like, holding his cane under his arm while he's using the shotgun? Like, what happened? Did it just atomize? Well, of course, you can come up with what happens in your world, but for me, Crowley's cane basically collapses into like kind of, I don't want to say a wand, but anyways, it collapses and he keeps it like a dagger. You know how people use a hidden blade and they put it right above their butt. He has the same kind of little pouch that he puts right there, and that's like the only thing that Crowley really has. Because Crowley can basically pull things from existence, but let's just say for an aesthetics perspective, that's one of the only kind of visual things he has. Which, by the way, that's also something that I wanted to mention. Some catch up is there is a reason why I haven't given you guys, like I haven't stopped you and just fully explained what the main character looks like, Grimm, and what the other character looks like, Crowley, is because I like the idea of you guys coming up with that and or whatever. I don't feel like it's necessary. If I was writing a novel, of course I would go to every explicit detail, but there are like a couple traits that I am pretty greedy about. I do like the idea of, okay, both of these characters, because of plot points and the story stuff, have very different looking eyes, and I like our main character having this kind of like orangish glow to his eyes, not yellow, but like an orange, like the specific kind of looking fire, you know. And Crowley has demon eyes, whatever you want that to be, whatever. In the show, Good Omens or whatever it's called, or is it Bad Omens? I think it's Good Omens. Yeah, he has like these snake slit eyes. But let's say he just has these red, I don't know, let's just say he has red, maybe slit eyes, I don't know, but he has these really bright red eyes. Sure, I don't know. Again, like, I say these are the things I'm pretty anal about, but basically, our main character, the thing that makes him stand out are his eyes. He has fangs, sure, like canines, like a werewolf. And then the third thing is his bone hands and feet. But that's the only traits that I really care about. He could have like giant fucking long hair if you want. He doesn't for me, because I just seems weird. I don't want this on our main character. And Crowley basically has his eyes, and that's pretty much it. With some other things following suit, like his cane, his like kind of weird orb cane. That breaks down materials, and let's say his rings are always pretty present. So yes, that's what our characters look like, but again, I don't really want to go into the specifics because I like the idea of you guys just picturing what you picture. Maybe you imbue yourself on the character that you find more endearing, Crowley or our main character. But yes, moving on. Sorry, I just want to nip that in the bud. Oh, the other thing, sorry, one more thing, is I had one of those moments that I wanted in the story, but because we do this free-formed, in a podcast form, without me like having a list of the things I wanted to do, which we do, it's over here, but I realized the whole last part, I never looked at this once. I just said what I said, and I looked back, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, I hit everything. But there was one thing that I thought would be cool to add, just because there should be a transition point to really hammer home that Crowley will be giving our main character weapons, and I don't want that to be kind of taken out of the blue. So to me in the past, maybe between one of the things when we're going to go get Crowley's cane or something, Crowley maybe makes it a shitty gun out of like crap components and gives it to our main character. And our main character in the midst of battle uses a gun, but he unloads with it, like just completely empties the clip really quick, empties the magazine, shoots it really quick. And Crowley, while he's just draining this magazine, Crowley tries to speak up, and our main character, without listening, just keeps firing, and then pop, the whole gun explodes. And then in this moment, the main character looks at Crowley like, what the fuck just happened? And Crowley looks back and he's like, nobody fires a gun like that. You shouldn't fire a gun like that. Like, it has crappy components. I didn't have the time to harden the steel. It just basically starts like yelling at him, and there's like this back and forth nonsense. And the main character's like, well, you should probably tell someone that we don't have a proper weapon, or it's and all this stuff. It could break up into some sort of weird argument in the midst of combat. But I thought it'd be some way to kind of introduce not only Crowley trying to be like, hey, you know, you're helping me find this, and I can't really defend myself to the best degree yet. Here's something, you know. I have a flamethrower, you have a gun, whatever it may be. So yeah, that's something I might have added. I don't know. It's one of those things where it's a neat concept, I think, of having this moment to where you establish with the reader, hey, Crowley gives him weapons. Like, this is something that they've done and that they're started, which makes sense because Crowley's pretty weak, and our main character is showing that he's kind of the muscle at this point, and he's trying to power him up in that sense as well. Cool, good. Anyways, okay, I'll try not to do that anymore. Let's get back to the thing at hand. Our boys just popping off in the cemetery. So a little recap for what happened last part. Again, our main character attained his relic. Grimm, I gotta stop saying main character. Grimm attained his relic. So of course there was this giant statue of this undead wraith-looking thing, holding this mummy-looking thing, and holding him by the throat, and picking him up. Let's say. Anyways, everything was stone except for, of course, the gauntlet. So our main character is feeling undead. Basically, that's what I wanted to get. Is he's feeling the undead part of himself kind of bleed out. And that's an awful feeling because you feel, I like the idea of Overlord's representation for the undead, which is they feel like almost nothing, like they're very, very empty in terms of emotions. It doesn't mean they're bad or evil, it just means they don't feel sad, they don't feel happy, they maybe feel waves of lighter versions of both of those, let's say. But anyways, our main character, fast forwarding it, makes contact with the this giant green pulse happens, sends him flying back. He smashes through a couple tombstones, sees that he has this gauntlet on his hand, on his left hand specifically. Then he hears whispers coming off from the distance, and then a catacomb door opens, and what steps out is this giant mummy looking thing. And I like the idea of it being more wrapped than anything. So like sometimes mummies in monster movies are like, you can kind of see the slits of their eyes, and you can kind of see like the decayed flesh. I don't really want that. I want the mummy to basically be fully mummied, like fully clothed, with very tiny slits of his flesh showing, and instead of just being flesh, it's this glowing green aura kind of thing. Like, I don't know, whenever I picture a necromancer or lich, I see this like pungent green, like this bright kind of sinister looking green. So yes, he basically has this moment, and I wanted to really have this moment, and I tried to do my best to build it up while on the spot on this podcast. But yes, this moment where he has to, well, first of all, we had to come up with a reason why his necromancer form was kind of lagging behind, and especially I haven't decided yet, but I think I would do it the way I did it, which I was hiding the prefix in which he thought, but he dressed up on Halloween night as the Lich King, which is also why it was such a painful experience for him to transform into it. But it's a fucking strong form, so why the hell wasn't it giving him help this whole time? Well, it wasn't giving him help because the Lich was asleep. It was in like hibernation, dormant, and all that. And of course, basically, it would have been dormant forever, and that's something that I would like to play with. Is maybe that's the case for every lich. Is that every lich has this like kind of hidden, like the lich inside is asleep, is in nighttime mode. So yeah, there's two problems happening. One, our main character basically needs to help Crowley, because by the way, Crowley was fending off the horde of zombies in the cemetery. Anyways. So there's this pinnacle moment where essentially our character, it's like live or die. You have to figure this out. You have to basically save Crowley, but also use this thing that you have. So our main character goes back and forth in his head, and we did it in the last part. I don't want to go over it again, but basically he comes to the realization, and this is something that I've always thought about and believed, but it's the truest form of nature within all living things. And of course, that is the desire to want to live, to want to survive. And that's something that connects even monsters and human beings greatly, is this desire to want to live, and then furthermore playing off what that could become. So it's not just about like if you were getting mauled by a dog or a wolf. Hope to God you'd try to kill it or try to win, try to survive. But then there's something else that comes with that. But what happens if maybe there was something, maybe you had a little more confidence. Maybe instead you had a gun. You were in the woods and you seen a wolf and you had this gun, and the wolf started circling you. And in this kind of moment, and I think about this, and maybe this is crazy, but in this moment, I feel like say you were, let's change it up. Let's say a human being is on top of you, beating the shit out of you. And sure, there's things ringing in your head like I want to survive. How do I get away? How do I beat this person, etc. But I also like to think that there would be this part of you that thinks, am I gonna die here? Is this how it's gonna go? Like this is it. This is the way it all ends. On top of me, just this dude just punching me in the face, and then there being this breaking moment where this limbo world where it's not about fight or flight, but it's about both. It's about how the hell can I survive, but also how the hell can I hurt this thing that wanted to try to break me, that wanted to try to end me. You live in this kind of limbo period of the apex of survival, which is not just the desire to run away and survive, but the desire to break whatever tried to break you. And there's just being this carnal thing. And I like this idea because it plays off of this thing that is, it's not moral per se. You know, it's not like, I want to live to save somebody. And it's like, okay, sure, that's something that people have done before. But I'm not sure if I think power can come from being selfish. But that doesn't mean you have to be evil, you know, it just means you can just use this energy, this kind of source, for something good. It's about rerouting your pathways in your brain kind of thing. You know, if someone, say same thing of someone who finds a way to translate anger into progress, into like focus. a person who was bullied and got kicked down and everyone and felt like nothing his whole life. Maybe he found a way to reroute every pathway so that he became something, so that he used those sorrow-filled moments to become better, and not just let it devour him and break him. So to me, that's the idea that we're playing with. And as soon as he kind of feels that and acknowledges that, and also the wolf kind of helped him with the execution of it, because every time he hits something with the werewolf in mind, it growls, and that gives him feeling like some confidence, some rev to his engine. So it's not just this silent combat, it's this feeling of the wolf saying, I got your back and I'm here, and I'm ready, I'm right behind you. Let's tear these things apart, like this, they're not gonna get us, kind of thing. So of course, in this moment, he stands atop this thing, speaks to the depths of his soul, and says something just ravenous, not like destroy them, get them, but instead rip them to shreds. As he says this, of course, it echoes through the whole graveyard. There's this silence, and then whoosh, you hear this stomping movement, and then boom, you see finally one of his mummy things go, and then another one go, and then another one go, and then they're just all revving up and they're annihilating everything. And then I had another moment where basically it's like, okay, our boy, it's time to do combat. So he jumps down from the grave tombstone thing, whatever he was on top of, and then 3 zombies, whatever, plop over. And at this point, I wanted to establish that, okay, why was it so important, or what's the gain for the lich, the necromancer thing inside of him, to be awake? What kind of good can that do? Well, in this moment, I wanted our main character to learn some things. And one of the things that I thought would be cool is if this was like a TV show or a book, I would have basically the lich to be silent. The lich did not have a voice, kind of like the werewolf doesn't have a voice either. It has a growl, it has like that intent, that feeling. But for the lich, I think it'd be cool for the main character to hear 1,000 whispers, and then for him to kind of like respond almost as if he's hearing something in those whispers, but the audience couldn't per se. But anyways, in this moment, he sees these 3 zombies jump down, and he gets ready to like in battle stance. His eyes lock with the one person, and then there's this like bone ethereal hand that grabs his cheek and moves it to the left and shows him that, like, look over there, like over there something's about to happen. And what he sees is that Crowley is reloading his shotgun, and he's about to get stabbed from behind because he's not paying attention or something like that. Anyways, he quickly realizes, oh shit, and then his eyes like quickly flash green. And that to me is like, he's prominently always the werewolf, but his eyes, when he gives a command, flash this glowing green. Anyways, this sends all 3 of his mummies just to shred this one single zombie that was behind Crowley. But then it also puts the main character understanding what just happened, what's going on, and then of course he starts to realize that the lich is trying to teach him something. So then he starts to listen, and in this listening, he comes to the understanding that the lich is basically saying, hey, stop focusing so much. Like, yeah, the wolf was trying to teach you, just focus on this target and rip it to shreds. But calm down. You're not this ravenous thing. You're a king. You're someone who leads others. So slow down, pull back. You don't need to be locked in and like a boxer, just ready for this thing right in front of you. So at this point, he opens up, and starts kind of taking in his surroundings, which again, this plays off of the other thing that he got from the wolf, which is his ultra instinct, which is this kind of slow down mode where he can kind of take in all this information. Maybe you could say it's a causality because he has scent, hearing, vision, eyesight, and all these things merged into one, which is this sensory overload, which allows him to perceive things quicker. Sure, I don't know, whatever you want. But yes, anyways, one of the things that I wanted to keep playing with is that idea of this subtle teaching moment. So instead of him just like jumping at one of them and ripping them apart, again, this kind of ethereal hand comes and pushes his shoulder back. And in pushing his shoulder back, he basically tells him to like shift your momentum and take a step to the left. And then this undead just kind of whiffs and like completely misses him. And one of the things I would like to actually add, because this is just a recap for the most part, is I would like to add our main character probably utilizing weapons more. So I said in the previous thing how he breaks his neck, and we can still do that, how because he's on the left of him and his momentum took him forward, he's right beside him and he breaks his neck, sure. But then maybe the other 2, he completely finds a way to grab their weapons and hits them. Now, this is where we stopped last part, and there's a reason why we stopped, because there's still some things that I would like to kind of touch on and get to. So one of those things is that if you guys could do me a solid, see all of this right now in a one take. So again, I don't know what it is with my brain, but even when I dream, or I don't really dream, but whenever I think of stuff like this, it like pivots between, okay, well, if this was a story, this is the beats that I would want to hit. No, okay, if this was a TV show, this is the kind of thing I would kind of try to film it in. And if this was a game, this is the mechanics that I would have in the game to make it make sense. And then boom, 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 boom. So I kind of layer it on. But in this instance, I think of this badass one take, one shot, one single shot with the camera kind of floating around, giving credence to everything that's going down within this cemetery. So if you guys could look at it through that lens, that'd be pretty dope. So anyways, through that lens, we see our main character break that one's neck, that undead's neck, and then let's say the camera pans to the right and starts tracing him. And instead of it being in like this slow-mo time dilation mode, our main character just beats these two in like 2 seconds and moves forward. Now, for those of you guys who are like, dude, you're really painting our main character as like just this unbreakable person at this moment. One of the things that I would like to go back and change is our main character receiving hits and then healing through those hits because of his werewolf. But anyways, so he's not just like dunking on people, he is getting hit, and to me that would give more credence to the difference between the wolf who just tanks something and moves forward and chews through whatever's in his path, to the Lich King, which is more methodical and more clever about how he's using his momentum and seeing things coming, and that's all the lessons that this Lich is teaching him in this moment as well. But like, instead of just charging forward and chewing through whatever's in your path, take a minute to see what's happening. Look at their placement of their feet. Look at the way that their body's moving. Try to course correct for all of those things. At this point, again, I mentioned it, but it kind of is my way of jumping in or getting into the kind of Assassin's Creed Brotherhood combat style that I love so much. But anyways, one of the reasons why we wanted to stop last part right around this point is because I want to get to Crowley. And let's just say our main character sees that Crowley was struggling, so he basically pins two of his summons to Crowley. So it's like, okay, keep going, but one is going to accompany me, and we're going to do it that way. So anyways, our main character's off just slaying and killing and kind of trying to learn. And also he has that moment where he realizes his hands are as strong as, or basically unbreakable, because the Lich is concentrated in that area. Cool. Anyways, camera pans up and anchors into Crowley. And Crowley, by the way, is kicking ass and taking names. I'm just not explaining it, but he was holding off the horde, so clearly he's doing something. So again, he is limited by having this double barrel. But he's making hella work with it. He's just popping people, keeping himself moving. Again, I want Crowley to kind of find his way at some points, which is like, this is beginner Crowley, so I feel like it's pretty fine. But anyways, he's basically just running through tombstones and shooting them and jumping over stuff and just keeping himself away from them, that kind of thing. And again, this is all one take. So when Crowley's reloading, let's just say he's about to reload, and then one of the zombies crawls over a tombstone, is about to get him, but then this giant cloth person comes out of nowhere and just grabs that zombie and throws it through like 3 tombstones and just psh, 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 and then it's just completely obliterated. And Crowley's like, thanks, and he's reloading again. And we could even say, yeah, sure, I kind of didn't want to do it this quick. So then Crowley turns around after he's done reloading and cranks 2 into this one that's kind of just starting to come out of the ground. So he just turns his gun, boom, boom, obliterates them. They're no longer coming out of the ground. But anyways, the whole point that we're trying to get to is eventually in this chaos, Crowley's ring sparks. Like, it's a little quick, like kind of like twinkle, flash, whatever you want. And then Crowley's like, perfect. So then he takes a minute and he's looking through his skill tree, essentially. And there's a zombie coming up behind him, but then again, Crowley's being guarded by these 2 mummies. So of course, they don't let him get the drop on him. So anyways, again, the reason why I say it like that is because the way I see it is it's a camera shot, like it's one take. So Crowley's just booking it through jumping over shit, killing everything, and his ring twinkles and the camera punches in with Crowley looking at his hands. But behind him, there's these zombies coming out of nowhere. He doesn't care at all. He's just absorbed into his thing. And maybe he has like a cheeky grin, like perfect, like he's clearly excited about what he's seeing. And then of course the zombies are about to touch him, boom, gets smashed out of nowhere. And let's just say that the mummy grabs this one that was about to reach him, grabs his head and just smashes it into one of the giant like giant crypts and crumbles a bit of it, and then the head drops down and falls. And what I'm trying to get at is that these summons are just like meathead strong, like just ridiculous strength behind them, but they lack intelligence, so to speak, so there's that kind of give. But anyways, Crowley clearly buys something, and then he picks up his shotgun with his hand and looks at the point where the double barrel breaks, right underneath the trigger. Anyways, his eyes quickly flash red, and you see right above the trigger, right where the shells go in, this thing pop off, almost as if someone did a quick weld job and popped off these underneath the barrel of the gun. Crowley does that, and then again, it's all one take. It's all the camera's just punching in at the right moments. He holds out his hand, and then this thing kind of atomizes, and again, the way I see it is this beautiful, like, flickering. Again, if you've ever seen shave off metal off of like a sword or anything like that, there's these beautiful sparks that kind of dwindle. Well, let's just say they're concentrated within whatever is being atomized. So this nice glowing hue, this orange glow, every time this thing is like coming into existence. What he makes basically is a giant magazine. So then at this point, Crowley's smiling, he cranks the magazine into that little pocket that he made underneath his gun, right above the barrel, and basically Crowley just unlocked the mods, essentially. So he has his shotgun, he alters his shotgun, and then smashes this giant magazine in it, which is the thing that he's been kind of struggling with the whole time, which is having to quickly fucking reload and shoot and quickly reload. So then he unlocked this in his skill, boom bam, shoves a giant magazine in the gun, in his double barrel. But one of the problems that Crowley's also been facing is this, for those of you guys who don't know, a double barrel has two triggers. So it's bang, bang. And it's quite weird and odd and just not comfortable. Crowley cranks a magazine in there, and then I want this to be different. Like, Crowley just got this upgrade, and now Crowley's starting to get into this wonderland of death, of this okay, now you can eviscerate things. So then as soon as he cranks in that magazine, bang, 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 like 1 down, 2 down, 3 down. Sure, let's say he gorges on this one execution and just bang, 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 4 shells in this one helpless zombie, like, oh god. And at this point I want the camera to hammer back to our main, to Grim. I want him to, this basically to have implied, like, okay, some time has passed. I didn't want to go into, like, him, like, the Lich basically being like, yes, now do this, now do that. Well done, my student, or some bullshit. I don't want to give too many specifics, but sure, let's say, Grim is in the middle of this brutal execution. He stabs, one of the zombies in the neck with a knife. By the way, zombies are like, they feel nothing, but they're not resistant. At least not these ones, because they're kind of low level or whatever. We could talk about that, at a later date. But anyways, as he's done executing one, there's a zombie right along his path, because again, it's kind of like a maze, a maze where they can all see each other, and if they wanted to, they could hop over the hedge, I guess. But it's gates and like tombstones that's kind of quarantining everything. But anyways, one of the things that I've mentioned is that our main character kind of has this problem where he can like use his speed to get to something, and then he uses the werewolf again to like have this insane strength of a punch or anything like that. So in this sea of whispers that he's constantly hearing, in this evolved kind of combat state that he's in, he sees again this let's say bigger zombie right in front of him. It looks like maybe he's holding an axe like the other one I mentioned last part. Anyways, again, we could quickly punch into him and hear that those like thousands of voices are still screaming in his head, and he smiles, and then he just uses his like super speed, the ability just to boom appear onto someone, and instead of appearing like 2 feet in front of them so that he can punch them, he just pushes straight through them. So he tries to run right through them. Of course, he has his arm up, and I wanted there to be this moment where our main character basically just uses his speed in a smarter way, and less of just a mindless, I need to get over there to rip you apart. Instead, it's like, okay, I'll use my speed to push past you. I'm not ethereal or some shit, so basically my momentum will still carry me. And my arm doesn't break. My arm is like, what do you call it? Unbreakable. So I hold it in front of me and I'll push, and I'll basically send the zombie flying back. And of course, let's just say the gate that's holding in, like the gate around the cemetery, has these wicked, brutal spikes going outwards. Maybe it's a design thing, whatever. So it's a fence going up with curving spikes coming on the inside. Whatever. Anyways, he smashes him forward and he embeds him in those spikes. And at this point, he's now in this pretty big pathway. And all of the zombies are starting to punch in on our main character. And we could even, instead, before we get to this part, we could even say our main character is starting to play around with summoning. So let's say one of his mummies goes down, the one that was with him, and it gets kind of overwhelmed by thousands of these undead just trampling them. So then our main character quickly bends down and runs his fingers along the ground and steps back. And as this short, like, decayed zombie is running at him, as the zombie extends his arm to go get him, this giant fucking hand wraps around this zombie's throat and just cranks him into the ground. And then this again, mummy starts pulling himself out of the ground, out of this like pool of giant green liquid kind of looking stuff, or this giant glowing hue of green, where his body is starting to come out of nothing. But basically, I just want to get at that, okay, both of our characters are starting to understand, and our main character is starting to understand the relic, and we'll explain the relic when we have some time, but right now I have you locked into this situation. Let's continue. Anyways, so Grim is being pushed down this giant maze part, and one after the other, and clearly now the zombies have like prioritized a certain someone, the person who has the thing, who has the summons, who is starting to shift the tide of battle because he is the thing that's controlling the mummies, which are giving them a hell of a leg up. So at this point, let's just say they're locked onto our main character and they're just gunning at him, and they're all coming down this one path. And our main character's like, shit, there's no real way to like break into this. And maybe let's say he's running low on the werewolf's power and all that stuff. So he can't like just burst in there, do a quick hit, and then run back. So he's kind of like shit. So he starts backing up, and let's say they start bleeding out one by one. So he takes one down, takes another down, but then they slowly start to like merge together forward, with less like driplets coming out of zombies. Anyways, so in this moment, I want Crowley to the camera to punch back to Crowley to see this, and then for him to say, "Grim, catch!" And then he throws him his double barrel with a full magazine, topped off, all that stuff. And sure, if we were making a TV show, let's say this slows down and that same one shot pans as Grim's hand reaches out, he makes contact with his shotgun, but let's say 4 or 5 in this horde coming towards him jump in the air, and they're in midair about to get him. And if we were doing this as a TV show, I would have, as soon as they're in the air and the camera kind of sees all these monsters jumping at our main character, he makes contact with the shotgun, and then time stops slowing down. It's normal speed, and then it's just like a wall hits all 4 of those jumping at him, and a lot from the back. And they're just to be like this sound of like this boom, and then just their numbers are almost cut in half in an instant, and I want Crowley to be like, oh, like that makes sense, like okay, because yeah, he still has the power of the wolf, that like tactical time dilation, that like slow down period. So as soon as he gets the gun, it's not requiring like energy or like force or exertion of your strength, which would deplete it. So instead, he just exists in this like slow-mo state for the whole duration, and just cranks each one of the people in the face, and that's why it sounds like there's just quick fire, quick magazine empty, and Crowley's like, well, okay, like shit, maybe there's some value of just giving you the weapon and me kind of just being the craftsman, but also yeah, but we're gonna do some changes on that when it comes to scaling, just because I'm getting sick of messing around with the main character's power. Anyways, yes, so we're not done yet. The main character empties like the whole magazine in all of their heads, boom, 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 but it seems instants because he was in this slow down state. Cool. He pulls the trigger twice, and you hear like nothing. And let's say there's only like a few left, like let's say 2 or 3. Anyways, one of them jumps at him again. I want our main character to basically spin around, do a 180, and take the barrel of the double barrel shotgun and just basically push it right through this undead that's lunging at him. And again, let's just say the undeads have really tender skin, so it just, even though it's a kind of a blunted double barrel end, it still punches right through one of them. And then there's another coming from the left, and he quickly backhands him with his claw, taking the full face off of the undead that was to his left. And at this point, let's say even an undead would realize, oh fuck. So the last one remaining kind of drops down to his knees like, oh shit, please stop. But our main character's in like this bloodlust state, so then he takes the gun that he used to bash through one of the zombies and just smashes the last zombie in the face, and then he crumples down, but he's still holding himself. And then he quickly comes back around with a left hit, bang, 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 and he just keeps walloping him until there's basically just a puddle of mush. And sure, let's say he's breathing heavy, he's feeling that rage, that berserker, and then he finally picks himself up after it. Clearly he's destroyed him, takes a deep breath and goes, oh no, and he looks at the gun and it's completely mauled and broken. The shotgun that Crowley just gave him is busted, bent, and full of blood. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, and he turns around, and as he turns around he sees something coming at him, so he raises his hand and grabs it. And it's Crowley basically giving him another replica of the same shotgun. And Crowley's like, don't worry about it. That was one hell of a show. As he walks by him, he takes his cane and taps the busted to shit shotgun, and it just completely evaporates into sparks. I made something even better. And he kind of lifts up his hand and he shows this Uzi. And again, the character, or the power type that I've seen that I really, really liked, is coming from the show called Frietta. Again, it's criticized. There's things that it does really poorly, but one of the things that I think was awesome in the show is that showcasing this main character coming up with these cool ideas for weapons and utilizing the resources that he has at his disposal to, of course, make these badass and crazy weapons. So that's something that I kind of very much see the same kind of weapon, except instead of this crazy revolver, which is in the show, instead it's this just black with red highlights of an Uzi. And he's like, now I can finally play with this. And again, it's Crowley kind of realizing his weaknesses, where again with the shotgun he was doing not the greatest job, because of the weird double barrel pull of the trigger kind of nonsense. Whereas our main character can really use anything because he's in a slowdown state, so he can just aim and boom, boom, boom. But Crowley's like, okay, well I don't have that luxury, so I'll just use basically an automatic. So that way I can just point at the direction that I want for bullets and things to appear, and then just pow, end everything in that direction. But yes, that is very much the way that I seen it happening in my head, is this one shot, one take, whatever you want to call it, that happens in TV sometimes, and there's being this ravenous thing, but also to basically give our main character a break, so that the reader or that the person that's watching the TV show wouldn't have to just sit there and be like, okay, so he's being kind of taught how to fight less of a berserker idiot. And more of a general, a person that is aware of all the pieces on the battlefield and tries to take them in. And why that's important is because of something that we're gonna get into. But yeah, so did I miss anything? I wrote down some stuff. Oh wait, full stop. I forgot about something. So say at some point in there, our main character, one of the things he learns is his again, the Lich basically hints at him okay, there's a person right there, hit him, and he goes to go hit him, and I'm not sure how it translates, but basically our main character shoots out his Lich's chain, basically, that thing that he basically just thought was a mobility factor. But he hits this person with it, it wraps around this undead, and the undead's tied up, and then his eyes burst with this kindling of green. And then of course the chain kind of melts off of him, or just goes off of him somehow. Anyways, essentially we're hinting at another kind of power, which is kind of raised dead or domination, whatever you want to call it. Basically, we now have converted this undead to working for us. And let's say as soon as he does that, he notices that along his giant gauntlet are these green gems, and one of the green gems that looks quite bright and pungent is no longer there, or it's not no longer there. It's no longer bright. It's tapped out, like a soul was taken from it, and of course placed into that. So that's also something that the Lich kind of shows him inadvertently by saying hey, use the chain, do something with it, and then it kind of flies out of him. He's like, shit, why did I do that? And then he sees, because the Lich is passively being do it, do this, I promise you won't be you're nah, that kind of thing. Anyways, so those kind of moments were also what I was hoping for. But anyways, this is for the first time ever gonna be something where we're gonna try to be. Okay, so long story short, we're gonna do one of those. Our main characters understand that what's happening. Hey, I got these mummies. I guess they're my summon. Sure, let's say Grim explains what the hell went on, and he explained that they wouldn't move until I ordered them to do so, and I think the reason why that is because of the prefix that I wore. And Crowley says, what's that? And he says, well, the full costume's name that I was going as is the Lich King, not just the Lich. So it makes sense why they weren't really following me, is because I wasn't really commanding them properly. I didn't really want them to go. I was kind of terrified of them because they're these creepy looking fucking mummy things. But anyways, sure. That's what happens. Anyways, so Crowley's like, okay, I kind of get it. But he doesn't ever open up about the feelings that he had, about like, you know, not necessarily that he wanted to save Crowley, although that was a feeling he had, but just that the feeling that won was the feeling of being insulted by this thing claiming that you weren't worthy to live, and that they were going to end you. I mean, he doesn't really talk to him about that. But anyways, fast forward. Hi guys, I forgot one little trait / thing that goes down with our boys is essentially, they're sitting chatting about what's happened with our main character and his powers, but Grimm noticed that there's basically all these little tiny marbles with a green swirl in them that's kind of like bobbing around. Anyways, he notices this, picks it up, and apparently Crowley can't see shit. But as soon as he brings it close, his medallion thing starts vibrating. So then he brings it to his medallion and gets sucked right into it. So then Crowley's like, what's going on? Because he's seen a little flash as soon as it made it inside of his weird medallion thing. So then our main character smiles and goes into his skill tree, again, igniting his relic, showing that Crowley, he's in there. Anyways, he buys his skill. Crowley hears a ding, and then our main character holds up the medallion in the general vicinity of the cemetery. And then Crowley just sees his relic basically flash 1,000 times. And essentially, Crowley asks, what the hell was that about? Come on, let me know. And the main character says, I have no idea. I think it's some sort of currency, but I can't make any sense of it. I just thought it'd be the smartest thing to do is collect this thing, right? And then this kind of triggers them while they're walking to start upon the conversation of their skills, which I will definitely need to be coming back to explain because I did not do the best job in real time, unfortunately. Yes. So Crowley finds himself with this newfound confidence, and the reason why is because he finally unlocked enough skills to where he's cooking with gasoline. He has these 2 or 1, let's just say for right now, Uzis that look mean as shit, and he knows has quite a bite. And he also unlocked mods, so not only does that Uzi have some cool bells and whistles, but let's say he unlocks an incendiary clip. Just something different. So at this point, Crowley's like, okay, like I've gotten to the point where I can start surviving. Like if something pushes me, I can push back. And in this state, and this is the one thing where I'm not sure people will be joyful about it, but I really like the idea of Crowley being like, again, I don't know, because I feel like this part gets weird fanfic shit, but I really like the idea in Good Omens, a TV show that I constantly reference when it comes to Crowley. Crowley has like 2 or 3 traits. One of them is that he dresses kind of weirdly fashionable, but it's in the old days. The other trait is that he has these eyes, and he covers these eyes with these special kind of glasses. The third trait is that he has this car that he loves to pieces, and it's like this really old classic car. And I might even go through the effort to show you guys the exact car. But I would love for Crowley to, for like the main character to ponder, like, you know, like what's changed, and then Crowley to explain, well, I finally got these 3 things, and these 3 things can open up the whole new world for me. And he said, check this out. And the car that they've been driving, which I didn't give much credence to it because it didn't really matter. It's just a car to get them to point A to point B. He holds his hand out and transforms his entire car into the one in the show, because I just feel like it's so, in my head, it's so tied to that character. So then he makes this really old-fashioned car that's got upgrades and stronger and better. Anyways, again, I'm kind of breezing by that, but in my head, I see it in such a cool kind of fashioned way, where he does like completely redefine and reroute all of these metal bits, and like truly shows that Crowley just completely shaped a vehicle, like not just a gun, but an entire structure. And it's very complex and crazy, so our main character is like, okay, I can see that the limiter on you is starting to like pop off, and well done. So anyways, I'm not going to go over the exchange that they had because I kind of want to get to this point. I don't want another 2 hour or an hour and a half videos that we had last time. So anyways, they find themselves in the car. And at this point, let's say that the next relic, which is Crowley's that they're going to go get, is farther away. So Crowley kind of senses that, and he says, okay, it's maybe a bit of a long drive. So as they're driving around town, we can have a conversation. There's a good window here for just some dialogue to happen. So one of the things that I've been waiting to tell you guys for such a long time, and this is why I was just like, fuck it, whatever. They move on to the next relic. is because one of the things that I've been so desperately wanting to tell you guys is this. So while they're in the car, Crowley says, it's awesome. He starts going into his skills that he just got, and one of them is the ability to add mutations to weapons. So these alterations of their general form, and so it's no longer him just basically having to remake something from scratch. He can alter it in a small way on the spot. But also he unlocked mods, so he basically can create attachments for those weapons, a barrel, a prefix that is like a magazine increase, but also he can add incendiary damage for those, but he's limited by some resources still because they haven't really been talking. And let's say every now and again Crowley puts his hand out of the car with his cane and just breaks down some random car, some random road, maybe even hiding it from the main character because he knows the main character's like, fuck dude, you're just destroying the environment. So he's just like, I'm not going to bother him with this, but I am leeching off materials from when we're having this conversation. But anyways, so he goes into his skills and starts explaining them, and he's really excited because he's finally gotten to that place where he feels confident in attacking. And our main character is like, oh, that's awesome, and he loves hearing about these skills. But eventually Crowley puts the question on him. It's like, okay, well, what did you get? Like, can you create more like different kinds of summons at this point? And then our main character kind of is like, yeah. Basically, what happens is my skill tree on the Lich's side splits into two different ways. It has the path of the Overlord and the path of the Horde. So I feel like I keep stumbling upon like World of Warcraft things. Yeah, that's not what I'm trying to do. But anyways, some of you guys might be like, oh, Grin, are you doing that thing? Are you doing that thing? Or are you straight up stealing from Overlord? No, if anything, I'm stealing a character from Good Omens. But no, what I mean by Path of the Overlord and Path of the Horde is basically he explains to Crowley that, okay, well, on the Horde's end, I can basically create like many mindless creations to go overwhelm my enemy. But over on the Overlord side, and this is not playing off of the Overlord anime, although I love it to pieces. This is playing off of the game series that I love, or the game, yeah, it's a series, it has like 2 or 3, called Overlord. It's one of my favorite games of all times. It's just such a fun, quirky, good experience. But basically you play this giant colossal being with orange eyes, with this special gauntlet. So again, very much using certain liberties with there because I love those ideas so much. But anyways, in that game, basically every time a life is taken, the remnants of their soul survive. So their soul goes off somewhere. Their being, you want to believe in an afterlife, sure. I'm not going to go into that, but they're basically, their energy of their soul, of their being, is left behind. And of course, with this gauntlet, it takes that remnant. And in the game, every time you kill anything, it could be like and they kind of make a joke out of it, like considering it's a game where you're like, you can either be evil or less evil. So basically you can like destroy a bunch of sheep, and that will give you a bunch of souls so that you can summon forth more stronger and better creatures. So I want to kind of alter this. I like the idea of that kind of currency thing happening, but I like the path of the Overlord, of being the opposite of the path of the Horde for our main character. So of course the Overlord is the path of less summons, but more intelligent, more strong, more dense. And general, and just overall, it's more specific. So it's not about just having like this overwhelming amount of undead army. It's not like Game of Thrones where you have like a bunch of these like random mindless zombies. It goes to the other way of having these less but smart things. And the main character says, I think I'll go down the path of the Overlord, because in comparison to the skill trees that we see, the one on the right, the Overlord one, is giant, like has way more little tiny side things that I can mess with. So he just sees that and he thinks that'd be a good route. And then of course Crowley inquires to what the heck's going on with the wolf, and then he breaks down the wolf as well and says that wolf's a little bit less complicated. It's not like strong enough, and that's kind of what I want to get at, is because he has the Lich King. He has way more of a giant skill tree that's way more complex than his wolf. His wolf is just inherently good at combat. But anyways, he says his wolf is a little bit more straightforward. It doesn't have any real heavy choices that I have to make, which, by the way, the Overlord path, he does have to choose path of the Horde or path of the Overlord. So anyways, the wolf doesn't have that. It's just a bunch of branching paths. Anyways, he explains that a lot of them are just like healing, damage, attack, and more bursts. Basically, that's what it is. As well as like a bunch of passive bonuses like better hearing, better eyesight, better weak point understanding, things like that. But then Crowley inquires to why, like, what have you picked? Like, what have you chosen? What kind of abilities and things you have? I haven't noticed like much different besides, you know, the way you fight from the beginning. And then our main character kind of puts his head down and is like, well, I mean, okay, you know, just there's a lot of choices, and I haven't really decided on what I want to choose just yet. And then Crowley notices that our main character's acting weird, so then, of course, he says, well, what's the problem? Why don't you just choose anything? Any choice is better than no choice. And then our main character's like, no, bullshit. I call bullshit. That's not how that works. And then he goes into his thought process on it, and he says, throw me some of your skills. Just at the first beginning ones, let me hear them. So then Crowley says, okay, sure. So then he explains that he has the path that he's been going down, which is the path of like weapon manufacturer, so he can craft these hellish and strong weapons. But then he has other ones, these passives like demon skin or a whole other skill tree that he hasn't really even seen, tied to manipulation and persuasion. Then he has another skill tree to attain to strength. Then he has another one attached to armor, another one attached to this, that, whatever. But then, anyways, he points out, he grabs like 4 and explains them to him. Hello, I'm back. Me in editing. Yes, so I wanted to clean this part up a little bit because it got a bit messy, and with us dealing with so many variables, best keep it quite clean. Okay, so yes. All the while, Crowley is opening his hand, looking into his palm, whilst not looking at the road, giving our main character great anxiety. But anyways, our character is willing to listen. So, Crowley lays down his foundation of a couple skills. Let's say one is tied to being able to repair armor. And he's like, that's pretty good, right? If I can eventually make it, then I can, just piece it back together. Pretty good. So then another skill is him saying, I can sense things through a great distance away. So I get a great sense of my surroundings. That's pretty good considering I kind of like to make a plan before I jump in. And then he lists another couple, 4 or 5. It doesn't matter. Whatever you kind of think would give him some strength, but keep him in his kind of box of craftsman. And our main character is wide-eyed, smiling, as well as he's just absorbing all this. Clearly, he's enjoying it. And then Crowley says, yeah, but then there's stuff like this that I just don't even get why it's here. There's this skill called Dismantler's Bargain. And it says every single time I break down a random material with my cane, there's a small chance that I'll get some sort of rarer resource. I don't really see the point in that. It doesn't fit into anything. So then our main character puts his hand on his head and says, whatever you do, buy that skill right now. Just purchase it right now. Crowley asks, well, why? Like, what do you mean? I just told you this is the one I want the least. So then our main character goes into kind of his this is a bad example because it's quite obvious, but goes into his kind of superpower, which is the idea of him explaining the value of everything and being obsessed with build skills and everything. So anyways, he goes and tells Crowley, well, you're not looking at that skill from every option or every perspective. Essentially, imagine, let's take the worst case scenario. Let's say we go to a trial or maybe some big bad person captures you and you're trapped and all you have is your relics, and our relics can never be apart from us. So worst case scenario, if you're trapped in a concrete box, you can still devour the ground and get resources. And those resources can allow you to create a key, anything to get out of there. Or let's say it's even worse. Let's say a big bad zombie, undead, whatever you want to call it, whatever we've seen, root monster, whatever nonsense, captures you and throws you in a pit full of bad monsters or evil enemies. And you're kind of stuck down there. Well, as long as you can kind of weather the storm and keep running, you can keep breaking things down, letting your magic build back up and breaking things down. And at least this way, it may take 2 hours of you running for your life, but at least this way you'll be able to actually craft something that can help you get you out of that situation. So there's a utility aspect there. But then he also points out the fact that this is one of the best skills to get early on, because rare, you don't have any judgment on how hard rare items are to get. So your best bet is to kind of get this now and kind of be more efficient early on, so that you don't have to be as efficient later on. Or maybe that being efficient now can mean that you just randomly have a huge surge of power when you eventually unlock a blueprint that can get you that thing, because you've already have the resource, because you just happen to get lucky, So he explains a skill like that, and Crowley kind of is like, oh, I didn't even consider any of that. And then, of course, Crowley's ring/palm quickly sparkles, meaning he purchased that skill. And what I'm getting at is one of the things that our main character is struggling with, and this is something that I personally struggle with it greatly, is if anyone's ever played Skyrim or any game that doesn't have respecking, and you start the game, you start this open world, and you're like, I really like melee weapons, or I really like swords. So then you start specializing in swords, but then you realize, man, I just die too quickly. Maybe I didn't get enough skills in this one thing, so now I just can't tank. So now I'm just dying, and I just find also swords to be really boring. I can only block and hit. That's pretty nothing like. So then you're like, okay, I'll make a change, and then you're like, okay, I'll use bows, and then you fucking love bows, and you start killing shit like crazy with bows. But then, even at level 100, you look back and you see those fucking wasted points looking right back at you, and it hurts you, and you hate it because you made some stupid mistakes, and those like 4 or 5 points that you spent in swordsmanship could be put into anything else that would be more valuable. So our main character kind of takes us with him, because let's say he plays video games, and this is something that he's experienced as well. And in fact, let's really layer on that our character plays video games, because I don't see how you could come to this determination otherwise. So then our main character explains, so then he basically goes into this like complex perspective of skills that Crowley didn't even consider. So Crowley's like, okay, and you hear this quick, like, again, this twinkle saying that basically Crowley just purchased it, and he's like, okay, Jesus, like I didn't, that was a lot. And their main character is just like, yeah, man, I'm struggling with this shit. And then he goes into it, and basically I wanted our main character, the whole reason why he's so good, and a reason why he becomes pretty strong in his own sense. And although I know some of you guys are like, he's already fucking dunking on people. Well, yeah, but again, if I had time to explain it, I would have these moments of him getting his ass kicked, but I just want to get to point B, so I'm kind of neglecting those parts. But anyways, our main character's kind of power, and this is something that I haven't seen in like anime really, I haven't seen in movies really. It's the idea that, let's say there is a person who actually plays a lot of these games, these MOBAs, these games with skill trees, like Diablo or something, and instead of just being like, hey, I played this game my entire life, and people called me a loser, but hey, I was reincarnated and now I'm tough and it all worked out. I don't like that. I think that's kind of cheesy. Well, I like that, but I think it's not something that I want to do. But I do like the idea of someone being like, well, I played these games before, and I built. I know what to do. I know what to build for something being strong, and that being this character's kind of like passive key to power, basically, is the idea that he sees a skill tree, like nobody really does at the beginning of their thing. And again, this is why he hasn't really been investing in skills, and he confides this to Crowley, being like, I don't know what to do, because basically, let's go down some other paths of our necromancer lich. He's like, I can either choose to summon forth this ethereal sword and this giant arm holding it, just to do a great amount of physical damage in front of me. And he's like, that's kind of good, and I can alter that to be basically a fire sword, a shock sword, and all these things. And Crowley's like, that sounds awesome. Why do you seem like, you're bent out of shape about it? And then he continues and he says, well, that's because over here on the left-hand side, I can choose to summon forth green souls. And I can throw them at my enemy, and they apply a very, very weak debuff. Like not very good. Like it's like 15% more damage taken. Not that great. And Crowley's like, what do you mean? Like I'm so confused. Like what? And then my character's just wait. But down this skill, down the path of the soul or whatever it is, later they can have a chance of applying a capture or a corruption, the same thing that his chain can do, that can basically convert whatever he hits to being to following the Lich King. He's like, but not only that, I can increase the amount I can throw, and I can decrease the amount they cost. So not only is this become like, at the beginning it sucks, this skill that seems trash, is kind of just trash, but if I invest in it and I put the right time into it, this thing can flourish into just being this annihilation thing. And he tries to go in and explain it to Crowley, but Crowley doesn't really get it. Crowley kind of gets it, let's say that. But basically the idea is that there's a skill early on that I can get that's strong, but doesn't really have much potential. But then there's a skill at the beginning, where if I put the time, and if I survive long enough to get the other 2 or 3 skills after it, that's when I'll have like a different level completely. Not only will I have range, but I'll have the ability to make this thing damage heavy. and also I can reduce the cost in which I can cast it, which means I can throw like 50 of these things at somebody. So he sees the potential where other people potentially wouldn't, because he thinks long term and he thinks about how things can play into each other. Basically, something that I do constantly, and I am projecting very much onto the main character in this way, is I have always loved the idea of builds in games. And guys, you've seen my Borderlands things where I'm just talking about stats and how I think this would play into that, and how a weapon could play into the build itself. So to me, this is something that I think would be pretty cool as to introduce to the characters being introduced to this world. Of, okay, well, what happens if you had someone who right out of the cuff knew how to build his character? But anyways, he confides to Crowley and he says, well, I really want to go down this path. I know you may not get it, but I'm also worried to go down that path because I don't know if we're going to be able to survive, because I've been kind of really leaning on the wolf, and even there's been some times where we've almost gotten snipped and killed. But then the main character kind of leans back and he starts taking in all the information. He says, wait, alright guys, I'm going to save this for the next part, so we will continue after this, but we do have some closing thoughts, so we'll fire back to me in the past. But this is me in editing, of course. I do want to go more into Crowley's skills, because like I said, I want to actually pivot hard to being to covering Crowley's power, because you've kind of really covered our main character's kind of power. But also, that's one of the things is that I want Crowley to be his equal. I don't want like this weird power scaling that's happening where our main character is basically saving the day constantly. But that's because the trials warrant that. But anyways, in the next coming parts, we're going to make sure I explain why Crowley gets a little bit nutty the same way our character did. Anyways, back to me in the past. And this is kind of also my way of being like, okay, we've really been laying it on really hard with our main character, like eviscerating people with his claws and all this shit. I'm like, okay, I really want to go over to Crowley because I'm getting kind of bored with this kind of clawing bullshit. So our main character is going to take more of a pacifist role, but also this works within the story because our main character is trying to learn from the Lich as well, because this whole time he's been learning from the wolf, the visceral anger and the rage. Whereas now he's going to take more of a observation perspective. So instead of being right in it and just tearing through what's ever in front of him, he's going to start to back up. And now that he has that shotgun that Crowley gave him, along with other things that's going to happen, he's basically holding back while Crowley's just going in and annihilating things with his crafting and things he can create now. So then they fully kind of come up with that plan of like, okay, you're going to keep speccing for that, but I'm going to hold off and I'm going to keep speccing for this thing. But this also means that I'll be tasked with debuffing things and moving in that direction. And the main character thinks to himself, okay, well, I still can invest in my wolf. So the wolf is basically just a good patch, but I'm going to really try to sit with my Lich, because we haven't had that much time, or I haven't had that much time to understand it. So that's kind of where we're going now. So that's kind of the position change that we're having. Crowley is now the executioner, and our main character is now the observer, so to speak. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Subscribe button to my right, as well as 2 videos to my far right. I appreciate you for watching this podcast, and goodbye.